So one thing I'd like to start off by talking about is how your employer supported you in rising through the ranks and what was most helpful.
I've had several employers, but maybe unlike some individuals, I started my career in oilfield services. So I worked a couple decades for a company called Schlumberger. Um, and I think a number of ways that you realize when you're starting out that you've been supported. But I think because I was very curious, open to different challenges, those opportunities were open to me, just like every individual in the organization. But I'd say there's probably a crossroads as as a female, as a working female, that I have found over the years, and especially now I'm in HR, that usually happens between the 5 and 8 year working mark, where you kind of look around and realize or contemplate, um, am I going to, do I want to get married? Will I get married? Will I have children? And what kind of effect is that going to have on my career? Um, it wasn't a daily thought process, but when I did find my partner, and we did get married, we actually happened to be married 7 years before we had children. And then at that point, I was able to take the time off to spend with, I have two girls, spend with my children and my husband, really enjoying that time off. And I was able to, because clearly you have 9 months to get ready, but there were conversations before that on then what my job would be after I returned. I happened to change positions both during my time in Schlumberger after I had children. So it was just very commonplace. It didn't feel extra special. And I felt like I had the support to map out those aspects of my career.
Definitely. And of course, statistics that have been getting a lot of attention lately are about how more women than men have left the workforce due to the pandemic's effects, including having more to manage at home. What programs do you think HR companies can put into place to support women?
I'm an advocate that um, we should have in place family policies, right? That and my changing, the trend of my thinking has changed over time. And because these are very centric to working, in essence, mothers, that's what you're asking, or working partners, and the burden of certain aspects being done, the adulting part of life in terms of getting the groceries and cleaning the house, but family friendly policies that then support getting those things down, from taking just even flexible time off to complete items. Um, but also, I think that, I wouldn't say burden because there's social norms, but part of that discussion has to be occurring at home in terms of how are those things balanced. So I think aspects of even parental leave, regardless of how you bring someone into your family, whether it's through birth of a child, through surrogacy, through adoption, then equalizing time off so that both individuals can spend time, forming a bond and bringing, it's never normal after you have a child, but trying to then find your feet to not feel overwhelmed on all fronts.
Definitely. And on the whole, men still out earn women. What policies do you think business and HR leaders can implement to change this?
Um, Whether it's policies or good hygiene practices for an organization, but when total rewards reviews are being done, then it always makes sense and it should be completed an equity review. And so you have to look at the population across many demographics to understand if there is bias in terms of what has occurred in the past, and then how those biases can be corrected. And certainly pertaining to all aspects of pay, whether it be base, variable, or equity.
Mhm. And a LinkedIn report found that women apply to 20% fewer jobs than men. To what extent can HR do something about that? And what concrete steps can HR take to change that?
Um, I think it starts with recruiting. Uh, and I think these are well understood statistics that you are quoting. And it's, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's appropriate to, in a way, stack the deck up front, because research says that if I have 5 candidates and I say, okay, I'll have 1 woman out of the 5, if I actually have 2 women out of the 5, I'm increase the odds that I will hire that diversity candidate than if I only had 1. So part of it is just, have I thrown the net large enough that the pool of candidates I'm showing a hiring manager, right, that I've vetted, that I know are qualified. It goes without saying that the bar has to be um, where it needs to be for the role that you're hiring for. But if I can fill that pipeline with appropriate diverse set of candidates and not just onesies, then I've increased the odds that I can bring in, it's optical diversity. What we're looking for is diversity of thought. And we know there's different ways to hardwire that in. And then clearly that's one part of it. The other is creating environment where there is equity and there is inclusion. And I think the end of the spectrum is belonging. So I might have optical diversity around the table, but am I truly soliciting in how we run meetings, how we're asking for input and feedback? Am I truly soliciting multiple perspectives and I'm listening to those perspectives and I'm valuing those perspectives to have a better business outcome? And that in itself is a very long journey.